So for now, let's save our code and try it. Okay. Just a quick point. When we created the message variable, we were supposed to add this bit to the message variable following that statement. So we're missing a dot sign just before the equal sign there. So if we save and refresh the page, then sign up with the following details. Okay, of course, a success message there. So let's check our email inbox. So you've got an email there from Development Island. And if you click on the link, so you can see our email, so you can see the link to the activate.php file. Okay. And also we've got our parameters email with the email encoded for the URL and also our key or activation key. Now the next step is to create code for this activate.php file. Before we do that, let's go back to our MD5 function and replace it with a function which is using a stronger algorithm. Okay, so the reason why we want to avoid the MD5 function is because it's more or less easy or easier than other functions to find a collision. So a collision is when two different inputs produce an identical hash. So you provide two passwords, okay, and you apply the MD5 to each of them, and you get the same hash for both passwords. So that's what we call a collision. So for the MD5 function, it's actually possible to find collisions within seconds using a computer with moderate capabilities. Okay, so we're going to favor, in this case, another function called SHA-256. Okay, so the syntax for that function is slightly different from the MD5. So we're going to be using the following syntax. So we use the hash function, which will take a couple of parameters. So the first parameter is going to be SHA-256, and the second parameter is going to be our password. Okay, now this function is going to produce an output of 256 bits, which is twice the length of the previous method. So we're going to have 64 characters. Okay, as we're going to be storing this in hexadecimal. So you're going to go back to our table, okay, and then change the structure for the password to 64 characters rather than 32. Okay, and let's save. Okay, and for now let's just delete any records that we've got there. Okay, now let's move to the activate.php file. Okay, so I've just added the PHP tag and tidied up the comments. Okay, so first of all, the user is going to be redirected to this file after they click on the activation link, okay, after signing up. And that link is going to contain a couple of get parameters, the email and activation key. So once we get here, we're going to need to start a session. So that's the first thing we're going to be doing, using the session start function. Okay. So we need this to resume the previous session, and then we need to connect to the database. Okay, so to do this, we're going to include the connection file. Okay, All right. Now we're going to check if the email or activation key is missing. So the link that the user has just clicked looks like this, okay? And we're having get parameters for the email and activation key, okay? So to check if these parameters are provided, we can actually use the isSet function. So the isSet function is going to check if these parameters are actually submitted, okay, through the link. So this is different from the form, okay? So when you submit these using a form, they're always submitted, okay, even if they are empty. So we're going to use the following syntax. So we're going to have an if statement, okay? And then for the first parameter, we're going to use the isSet function, okay? And we're looking at the get variable, okay? So we're looking at the element corresponding to email, okay? So if that one is missing, that means the opposite of isSet, okay? Or the other one is missing, which is the key. Okay, then we're going to print an error message. Okay, let's copy that from one previous file. And let's say something like, there was an error. Please click on the activation link you received by email. Okay. So we're going to be using Bootstrap classes. We're going to be adding Bootstrap links later on. Okay, so that's if one of these is missing. Okay. So we can use an else statement. Otherwise, we can just exit the code here. Okay, and then move on. Okay. So now if none of them is missing, okay, we're going to store them in a couple of variables. Let's call the first one email. Okay. And the second one key. All right. And then we're going to prepare these variables for the query. Okay, so for the email, we're going to use the MySQLi real escape string. Okay. So again, a couple of parameters, the link variable, okay, and then our variable, which is email. And we're going to do the same thing for the key. Okay. Okay. Now to activate the account of our user, we're going to look in the users table and check if we have a combination with the same email address and key. Okay. So if we find that combination, we're going to go to the activation field and set that to activated. Okay. So first of all, we're going to create a query. So let's store it inside a variable SQL. And our query is going to be updating the table. So we're going to use the update keyword. Okay, so we're going to update the users table. And we're going to set the activation field, which is activation. We're going to set that to activated. Okay, and the condition for this is to find this combination. So we want the email field to be equal to the email variable, okay? And we want the activation field to be equal to our key, which is the key variable, okay? And just to be safe, we're going to limit this operation to one record only, using limit one. Okay. Anyway, we're only supposed to find one combination with us email address and key. Okay. But to be safe, we usually use this limit one, okay, in our code. Now we're going to check if the query is successful or not. Okay. So to check if the query is successful, we can check the number of affected rows in our table. So to do this, there is a function called mysqli underscore affected rows. Okay, it's going to take our variable link as a parameter. Okay, and it's going to count how many records have been affected by the previous query. So if the number of records affected is 1, and that's what we're looking for, okay, so if that's the case, then we're going to have a success message, okay. Otherwise, we're going to print an error message, okay. Okay, so in case of success, we're going to echo a success message, okay? So let's copy that message and change it to success, okay? So let's write something like, your account has been activated, okay? And then we're going to invite the user to log in. So we're going to echo a link. Saying login. Okay. And let's give it an href. Going to the index.php file, okay? So the user can log in from there. Also, let's style the link by giving it a button type. And also, let's give it a couple of classes. Okay, so let's go for button large, okay, to make the button big, and also let's give it a button success class to make it green. Okay, so let's save. Now, if the query has not been successful, we're going to echo an error message. Okay. Saying your account could not be activated. Okay, please try again later. All right, just a small change before we continue. The parenthesis that we, of course, in the query there, okay, so the end of it should be right there, okay, as it corresponds to the where condition, okay. All right, now before we test our code, let's just add some styling, okay, and include the Bootstrap and jQuery files. We can do this in an easy way by going to the Bootstrap folder, okay, or the Bootstrap chapter, and copy the content of the contact form, or rather the PHP folder, okay, and go to the contact form and just get the structure from there, Okay. We're going to delete the PHP code. Okay, so let's copy this right at the end and delete the PHP code we've got in there. Also, we don't need this form. Okay. Okay, and let's change this heading to activation or account activation. Okay, and also the title to account activation as well. Okay, so we're going to copy all this PHP code. Okay, apart from the session start and the connection, and we're going to place it, okay, right after the heading. Okay, right there. By the way, if we have a quick look at our code, we will realize that we created the query, but we haven't run it, and we went straight to checking if the query is successful or not. Okay, so right after creating the query, there is a line missing there. We're going to need to run the query, okay, in the same way as before. So we're going to store the result in a results variable. So to run the query, the function is mysqli query. Okay, and it's going to take a couple of parameters, the link variable and the query itself. Okay, now let's save our code and test it. So let's submit a sign up form. Okay. So we've got an email. So let's click on the link. And we can see that the account has been activated. And if we click on the login button, it will take us to the index.php file. Okay. And now we're going to be able to log in. All right, let's have a quick look at our table. So we've got one record there, okay, and it's activated. So the user has actually signed up and they are now activated. Okay. In the next video, we're going to move to the login process.